Hey, how's it going? So I'm going to explain a little bit about the background here. So much of the work of this phase in history was influenced by the Age of Enlightenment. And this has a couple of different names: the Age of Reason, Enlightenment, the Neoclassic Era, it's also called. When you look at the development of Western literature, I've mentioned this before, and I'll probably go through it again, but it's just interesting to see the ebb and flow of subject, object, subject, object, subject, object. And in the European literature, you've gone from like a Romanesque phase to Gothic to Renaissance to Baroque, and then after Baroque into Neoclassic. I believe that's the order. But this is a time now where because the United States, when the colonies, when the people left England to form the colonies in the in the New World, they brought over, a lot of their thought was influenced by religious belief. So, there's certain paths that are gone down between subject and object by kind of like this action and reaction going on. And in the rest of the Western world, in Europe, this would coincide with the Baroque era. But in the United States, there was much influence on religious thought and in the Puritan ideals. And this is part of what the Baroque is. But in the United States, we're kind of I kind of like to separate that because the development was brought up very much on the Puritan ideas and some of the deviation from the European model. Anyways, now we come across the Age of Enlightenment, and this is where the United States is lined up with a lot of Europe on the Enlightenment and a lot of its values, and we can see this reflected in the writings and the thought pattern and in the reason, and then move into this objective phase here. So here we got the we got the founding fathers up here, and this is a famous painting. We think about the Age of Enlightenment in the United States. Enlightenment is connected to, the ideas of, enlightening ourselves and making some change. The independence movements, like the American Revolution and the eventually the French Revolution and other wars after that, are going to be sparked on the phase that is going to actually influence the next movement, which is Romanticism. But right now things are focused on this idea of reason, of working as a collective group, and this is approaching things with logic. And this is very important for the development of the ideas of how are we going to form our country and what are we going to do to design our new laws. So the Enlightenment was a major movement in Western culture in which the power of reason and objective thought influenced political, religious, and institutional beliefs. So you can see here that in terms of the political ideas, yes, United States were forming our new, Constitution, Declaration of Independence, all of the political ideas. Religious beliefs, I'll explain this in a minute, but it moved people away from some of the concrete original Puritan ideas and institutional beliefs in terms of government and church. So, like I said, we're moving away from the adherence to the Bible and Puritan thought. If we compare this section and how it is much different from the section all the Puritan preachers and poetry and spiritual autobiographies, you'll see a vast contrast between these different types of writing. So the former Puritan beliefs were put aside. General thought here moved into a more, moving away from the Bible and into a more idea of what is called deism, and that's the idea where people have a more direct relationship with God and not necessarily through the Bible. So that would be God created the world, and basically, the world is, he's not directly involved in change. He's not directly involved in the way people live their lives. The idea of direct action and punishment is not as strictly adhered to as the Bible preaches. And a lot of the deists of the times here were Benjamin Franklin, James Madison, Thomas Jefferson. And these are very important, influential people in the United States. And you can see how their ideas are much different from the Puritan idea. So deists believe that God created the world but has since been detached from it. This is much different, like I said, from the Puritan idea that there's a direct relationship between action and person's actions and the consequences involved in them. So the Enlightenment influenced this because, the idea of supernaturalism and the idea of witchcraft and the idea of a lot of the things that push people into this state of fire and brimstone, a lot of the preaching that we saw before, moving away from that, a lot of the emotional response to that, moving away from that, and we're moving into an age more on reason here, evidence and natural phenomena to explain the existence of God and themselves. So this is definitely something that we can see happening across Europe. Now the United States is aligned with that, and this form of reason is going to be influential for this period.